There once lived a man named Daniel, or at least, that's what he believed his name to be. Daniel was a quiet man. He lived alone, drank his coffee the same way every morning, and never missed his 9:07 train. But Daniel carried with him a silence too heavy for one lifetime, a silence even he didn't understand. Then one rainy morning, as the wind whispered secrets between the buildings, Daniel saw her, a woman in a long red coat, standing still at the corner of Fifth and Marlowe. She did not move. She did not speak. She only watched him, with eyes that had wept and waited for too long. And just before he stepped onto the train, she whispered, "You don't remember me, do you?" He turned, but she was gone. The next day, she appeared again. And the day after that, always in red, always watching. Until at last, Daniel asked, "Do I know you?" She smiled a little. "You used to, a long, long time ago." Then she turned and disappeared into the mist. That night, Daniel could not sleep. His apartment felt unfamiliar. His own reflection felt like that of a stranger. At home, he looked underneath his bed, and there it was, a strange book, a leather-bound journal he did not recognize. Inside, the handwriting was carefully written, as if every letter had been drawn with love. And the words in it chilled him. Day 91. He still doesn't remember. He still thinks he's Daniel. But his real name is Elijah. He turned page after page, and in it are all stories of moments he didn't recall, memories he didn't own, and that of a woman who had once been his wife. There was a photo hidden in the back. He saw in the photo a man who looked like him, holding hands with the lady in red, and on his finger was a ring. To confirm his doubts, Daniel ran to the city guards, the ones who watch over the minds of those who wander too far from truth. He told them of the woman, the journal, the dreamlike memories, but the guards found no records. No woman, no marriage, no man named Elijah Hart. And one of them asked, almost as a whisper, "What if the lie isn't hers, but yours?" The following day, Daniel returned to the red corner, and she was waiting. This time, she told him everything. She said, long time ago, his name had indeed been Elijah, a brilliant mind, a maker of machines, a dreamer of impossible things. He had invented a way to erase memory, to wipe pain from the heart like dust from glass. But when their daughter, Little Hope, died in a fire that swallowed their home, he chose to forget. He begged her to erase it all, the fire, the grief, even her, and so she did. As a result, he forgot their daughter. He forgot their love. He even forgot his own name. And from then on, he lived as Daniel, a man without sorrow and without a soul. But she, the woman in red, remembered everything. So every day she returned, hoping that a glance, a word, to photograph might light the candle in his soul once more. As she turned to leave, he spoke, voice shaking like an old wind through a broken door. What was her name? Our daughter? Tears slipped down her cheek as she whispered, Hope. And in that moment, Daniel's hands began to tremble. The fog lifted from his mind. And for the first time in many years, Elijah Hart began to remember. The scent of lavender on little dresses folded neatly in drawers. Tiny footsteps racing down a hallway that no longer existed. The sound of a lullaby off-key, but sung with every ounce of father's love. And her giggle, that precious, bell-like giggle that once filled every corner of their world. It all came rushing back, not in pieces, but like a flood, and it broke him. Elijah fell to his knees right there, on the street corner of Fifth and Marlowe, while the city moved on around him like he didn't exist. Like his grief wasn't big enough to stop time. She knelt beside him, the woman in red, the one who had waited and wept in silence. She held his face and whispered, I told you, love, you weren't always Daniel. You were someone who felt, someone who loved. And he wept for all the years he had lost, for the love he had abandoned, for the child whose memory he had traded for peace. But memory is a cruel bargain. What you bury doesn't die. It waits. And now it had returned. Elijah left the apartment that wasn't his. He never went back to the job he didn't love. He followed her, his wife, through the old neighborhoods, the forgotten parks, the places they once called home. She showed him the tiny grave under the weeping willow. Written on the gravestone, it reads, "Hope Heart, a light too bright to stay." And as he stood there, with trembling hands and eyes swollen with truth, he whispered her name over and over again until it stopped sounding like a stranger's. They didn't speak much after that. Some wounds are too sacred for words. But every day, he would find a memory, a note she had kept, a photo he once took, a lullaby he used to hum when he thought no one was listening. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, he rebuilt the ruins of himself. People in the city began to talk of the man who once forgot love, but found it again, of a woman in red who never gave up, of a child whose name still danced through the trees when the wind was right. Some say Elijah and his wife moved away to a quiet village by the sea. Others say they stayed, quietly, living in a home filled with old photographs and new memories. But one thing was certain. Whenever the world speaks of grief and forgetting, they tell the tale of the man who lost his memories and the woman who gave him back his heart. And so, remember this. Love may be forgotten by the mind, but the heart remembers what the mind dares to erase. Because love, real love, always finds its way back. But what most don't know is that the story didn't end there. Because memories don't just return. They haunt. They whisper at night. They leave doors half open and dreams unfinished. Elijah tried to move on with her, with their love rebuilt from ash. But sometimes he would wake up screaming, clutching the air, calling out her name, Hope. And sometimes he would forget again, just for a moment. A coffee cup he didn't recognize, a tune he couldn't place, and he'd stare at her like a stranger. She never blamed him. Instead, she began to write little notes, messages. She filled the walls of their home with reminders. You love jazz, even if you don't remember. This was her favorite color, yellow like the sun. She never stopped drawing. You once held me in the rain and promised we'd survive this. We did. The house became a museum of love and memory, a fortress against forgetting. And slowly, Elijah grew stronger. He began to write his own notes too, not for himself, but for her, because one day he knew it might be her memory that would fade. And when that time came, he wanted her to remember who she had been for him. A lighthouse, a map, a miracle. Years passed, and though the world spun fast and loud, people still whispered about the couple on 5th and Marlowe. Sometimes, they'd see them on a park bench, hands interlocked, watching the sunset like it was their first. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. But they always sat close, as if the space between them could steal something if they let it grow too wide. And when they were gone, no one quite knew where they went. Some say they moved to the mountains where the fog erases yesterday. Others say they built a little library filled only with memories, photos, letters, and lullabies. But if you ever find yourself lost in love, if you ever feel like you've forgotten the sound of someone's voice or the warmth of memory you once held dear, look for the red coat. They say it still appears. On street corners, in dreams, in the space between forgetting and remembering. Because some love stories are not written with ink, but with time, with patience, and with the kind of memory that lives in the soul long after the mind lets go. And so the tale is told of Elijah and the woman in red. Not just a story of memory loss, but of love so deep it found its way back to the dark and stayed. Yet even love, when weathered by time, faces its last chapter. The years pass like falling leaves, slowly at first, then all at once. Their hair turned silver. Their steps grew softer. But their hands never let go. They traveled less, spoke even less. But every morning, without fail, Elijah would bring her tea in the same chipped yellow cup, the one she said reminded her of their daughter. And every night, before sleep, she would read one of the memory notes from a wall, so that no matter what dreams came, she would remember who she was and who they were. Then one spring morning, when the sky was blue like hope itself, Elijah did not wake. He lay there, still, peaceful, and smiling faintly. A note in his hand, written the night before. In shaking letters, it read, "If today is the day I forget everything again, please remind me that I was loved, not just by you, but by a girl named Hope, and that I loved her back with all that I had. She held that note against her chest and wept, not out of sorrow, but out of awe, because even in forgetting, he had remembered the only thing that ever mattered. Elijah's heart was laid to rest beneath the weeping willow, beside the daughter he had once lost, and finally found again in memory. As for her, the woman in red, she stayed a while longer. She still walked the street where they first met, still left notes on the bench for strangers to find. Some read, "Even if you forget, love remembers. Don't run from pain. It leads you home." She was real. He was real. We were real. And one day, just like him, she was gone too. No one saw her leave. No one found her things. But a little girl walking past the old bench swears she saw a red coat fluttering the breeze and two figures, hand in hand, fading slowly into morning light. Now, when the world speaks of grief and love, memory and forgetting, they still tell the tale, not just of Elijah and the woman in red, but of all those who've ever tried to outrun their pain and found in the end that love never leaves. And if ever you feel lost, alone, or forgotten, listen closely to the wind. You just might hear her whisper, "Remember, we were real."
Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this beautiful story, please drop a like on the video and leave a comment on your favorite part of the story, moral lessons, and so on, on your notification bell so that you can get notified anytime a new and interesting video is released. If you believe in second chances, if you believe scars can become symbols of strength, share this story. Let it reach someone who's still fighting their past. Subscribe to my channel, Folktales by Queen Mother, for more real African stories that inspire, transform, and live forever in your heart. Please be rest assured that if you support me by liking, commenting, and subscribing to my channel, you will always stay motivated. It has not been easy getting here, but I really appreciate all of you who always watch my videos to the end. It's a lot of hard work, days of sleepless nights before one of these videos you watch on this channel is produced. I am counting on your support always to take this channel to the top. Thank you once again for your unwavering love and support. God bless you all.